Hey everyone, David here from the Five and Dime, and watch as I make over this vintage dated table and turn it into some easy Christmas decor. So first thing I'm going to do is give it a clean with white lightning, rinse it well with clean water, and let it dry completely. And now I'm coming in and I am removing some of the ornamentation. And time to give the whole piece a good scuff sand. So scuff sand is going to help me give a surface that's ready to accept paint. It's going to add a little bit of teeth or grit that the paint will adhere to. And I'll be using silk mineral paint on this. So it has a built-in primer and a built-in top coat. So it'll make it super simple for this project. Now that the scuff sanding is done, I'm coming in and giving it a really good rinse, and you want to make sure you get all of this dust up because anything that's trapped on the table is just going to make issues for you in the future as far as adhesion goes. So gave it a good rinse and then let it dry completely. I use Dixie Mud in order to fill in the little ridges or grooves or routed out design, and that's just so I have a completely flat surface to work with. Probably didn't need to do this process because I am doing a crackle on top of this, so it probably wouldn't have been noticeable, but at the same token, it's always good just to have a fully prepped surface before you start and then give it a good wipe. I'm using the color Black Sands by Dixie Mud Paint Company, and again, this is from the Silk Mineral Paint line, so it does have a built-in top coat and primer, which is why I didn't worry about any bleed-through. Bleed-through is an occurrence when tannins of the wood seep through or activate, if you will, when the wood gets wet. And of course, paint being a wet product, it's going to activate tannins, but I wasn't worried about it because, again, built-in primer, built-in top coat with the Silk All-in-One Mineral Paint. And I find that as long as it's a darker color, primer isn't necessary. If it's a lighter color, absolutely, or you're going to be adding way too much paint onto this. So Black Sands is only the base for this. I plan on adding a light color on top, and in order to give it dimension and an aged and vintage, and even more vintage look, I should say, I'm going to be using Crackle. And a couple things with Crackle that are extremely important. Number one, stir. And when you think you've stirred enough, stir it again for the same amount of time because it really needs to have the composition mixed into it really well. If you don't stir it really well, it won't activate. So I am stirring it really well, and then I'm going to apply it just with a regular brush. The thicker you apply the Crackle, the larger the cracks will be. The thinner you apply it, the smaller the cracks will be. So just making sure that I get all the areas that I want to put it on. And this is a really important step, is just making sure that you do apply it really well. And don't worry about overworking it too much. You just want to make sure that you really get the coverage that you want before you move on to the next step. And part of this is making sure you really let it dry completely before doing anything else. Again, you really want to make sure that your Crackle is completely dry. It's still going to have a glossy look to it. So it's going to be a touch test in order to find out if there's any amount of tackiness whatsoever, it's not dry enough and it's not going to work well. So I'm going to be using the color Cotton on top of this, and Cotton is the true white from Dixie Mud Paint Company's from the Chalk Mineral Paint line. And what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you brush in one direction only. There'll be no back brushing or you're going to absolutely ruin your effect. You'll really start to see the crackle before you even get to the end of it. I am using a heat gun just to dry the whole surface off. I want to make sure that it's completely dry because then I am going to seal it. And this is kind of the part where I come in and I seal everything because I'm happy with the application. And I want a clean surface now to move on to next steps. That way, if anything gets mucked up, my satin clear coat is going to protect the finish that I've already done. To add another layer to this, I am going to be using the Birchwood Stencil by Dixie Mud Paint Company from the Bells and Whistle line. And the first thing I want to do is tape off that lip. I don't want the stencil anywhere on the edge of the table, so I'm just taping off the edges to make sure that I have a clean surface to work with. My favorite product to use when I'm doing a stencil is wax, and I love the Best Dang Wax by Dixie Mud Paint Company because it does come in different colors. It comes in black, white, grunge gray, and obviously clear. And I'm using the grunge gray on this to give this very subtle effect on top of the table. After I let my wax dry for 24 hours or so, I came in with the Christmas cheer stencil. I'm just using parts of the Christmas cheer stencil. So the Christmas cheer stencil does come in 4 different parts, and I'm using one section of it and taping off little areas that I want to use on top of the table. And to really embellish this quite well, I'm going to use Gilding Wax in gold in order to add that pop of color. So again, we're working with a very neutral palette here, and the emphasis on this is about adding the gold and making it really start to look very Christmassy and shine. So the gold looked lovely. The stencil was perfect and very crisp, but I decided it needed a little more shine. It was just a little bit flat against the darker Crackle background. So let's add some Dixie Shine to this. So Dixie Shine is a foil product that you can use, and you start with Stick With Me, which is the compound that you will paint on. Let it dry for about 15-20 minutes so it's tacky, and then you just burnish your foil on top of it. And this is where it really started to add the shine to the table that was looking fantastic. To add a further level of detail around the edging, I came in with the Best Dang Wax in black, and that little dart and egg detail that's on the edge of the table was used, or highlighted I should say, in order to give it just a little bit more dimension and depth. And to add further detail, I'm using the Gilding Wax in gold just along the edge of the table and around the sides of the end panels. Gilding wax is one of the last things you should put on. It is an oil-based product and it spreads beautifully, but I do recommend that you always seal before you put your gilding wax on. It helps it to glide better, number one. And number two, if you do have an area where you've put it and you're not happy with it, you can wipe it back with a baby wipe. You can use a brush or you can use your finger to apply the gilding wax, and it really just depends on the consistency you want to get on there and how much control you want as well, and the size of the area that you're covering. Gilding wax comes in gold, silver, bronze, copper, black, and zinc, and it's great to add to your repertoire so that you have something that will add that glam and shimmer without a lot of work. And here's the end result. I think it turned out absolutely beautiful, from that dated, boring, dark table to something fun, vintage, and Christmassy. All right, everyone, thank you for following along. Ciao for now.